everybody. Chris Clark here at GamecockCentral.com. Flying solo for a little bit, but not for long, because we are going to have GamecockCentral.com's Jack Veltry, if he can ever get off the phone, y'all, is going to be joining me here in a little bit. Little impromptu GC Live today. Normally, my partner in crime, Wes Mitchell, is really running things, keeping us on track, being the brains behind the operation, all that good stuff. But Wes is working on some other things. And this isn't our normal GC Live time, as you know, normally where Wes and I normally like Mondays, Wednesdays, sometimes Fridays, about 2 p.m. So check us out normally around that time when other things aren't going on. But right here, doing a little evening edition here on Monday, June 10th. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. I figured it was a good time, quite frankly, to hop on and do a little impromptu version of GC Live, because there is a lot going on in Gamecock country. And first, before we get into any of that, I need to tell everybody about the presenting sponsor of the show. That is our good buddy, Clint Hammond of Movement Mortgage, 803-422-6797, or go to clint.hammond.com. You longtime listeners and viewers, you know about Clint. He's our guy. If you need anything in terms of a mortgage, refinance, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, hit up Clint. He can help you with that. And the great thing is, you're going to be able to talk about some Gamecock sports. So if you're sitting here and you're like, oh, Clint Hammond, I actually am thinking about refinancing, thinking about buying a home. What's the market like? What kind of rates could I get? And I want to talk to a fellow Gamecock about what's going on with the baseball coaching search. Clint will probably talk to you for a long time about the baseball coaching search. Y'all can trade thoughts, and he can trade some tips with you on the mortgage industry. He does an outstanding job. Appreciate his longtime support. And thanks to everybody for joining us. Man, already big numbers on the show. I figured there would be. So that's why we wanted to kind of drop everything and do this. We've been working the phones all day. And obviously, there's a lot of other news to get into. There's a couple other sports that are going to be making hires soon. It looks like those will be official tomorrow. A lot going on with recruiting, with a ton of welcome homes. We'll try to get to some of that. Wes and I probably this week will get on here and talk a little recruiting. Let's see how much of that we get to. But I think for the 500 plus people who are already on the live stream here, I think people are wanting to talk about a little Gamecock baseball. And man, I'll tell you, a lot of comments, a lot of thoughts already. It looks like, for those who are just tuning in, for those who have not seen, I think most of you have seen, South Carolina appears to be getting very close to hiring former LSU coach Paul Mainieri. Paul Mainieri, 66 years old right now, will turn 67 in late August, but has one of the most decorated resumes in college baseball history. This is a guy that began his career at St. Thomas in Florida, but he's been the head coach at Air Force, at Notre Dame, at LSU. He's won 1,500 games in his career. He won the 2009 NCAA tournament championship. So he took his team to Omaha and won it in 2009. 4 SEC titles, 6 SEC tournament titles, 4 Big East titles, 5 Big East tournament titles. And he was the National Coach of the Year 2015. He's also been the 2-time SEC Head Coach of the Year, among other things. I won't continue going and boring you with all those things. But the point is, Paul Mainieri, a decorated head coach. And this one has certainly, to use a baseball pun, come out of left field a little bit. And it's been fascinating. When Monty Lee was being bandied about as the hire at South Carolina as a potential, and Monty Lee was certainly legitimately in the mix for this job, Gamecock's interim head coach, former Clemson, former College of Charleston. He was certainly in the mix. It was kind of a polarizing topic among the Gamecock faithful. Same deal here, right? Which is kind of weird. It's kind of odd. Feel free, drop your comments, as many of you have, about what you think of the Paul Mainieri hire. I think the polarizing thing about this or the reason that some people are going, this is kind of odd. I think a few reasons. Number one, the name didn't come up for quite a while. It kind of came out of left field, and I'll talk a little bit about why I think that was in a little bit. Number two, the age, right? So if Paul Mainieri was 56, I don't know that there would be much polarization on this at all. I think people would look at that resume that I just laid out and say, yeah, this is good. Even though he's taken a little time off from coaching, right? I think people would say this is good. So I think the age is the other thing, right? And then maybe just adaptation. He's been out of the game for a couple years. It's a little bit of a different ball game. Not really on the field per se, and although it is in some regards, but just NIL, transfer portal, things like that. Will he adapt to that? And I think the staff, right? Like people are obviously concerned about the staff. But let's talk about what a lot of people are discussing here first, and that is, what would the staff look like? So let me be clear. The Paul Mainieri hire, we've confirmed on the Gamecock Central end, and I know it's been pretty widely reported. It very much looks like that's the direction this thing is going. As of, I don't know, an hour or two ago, not finished, contract not done, would still have to have a signed agreement, would have to be approved by the Board of Trustees. There is a Board of Trustees meeting tomorrow afternoon. As of right now, don't know that Mainieri's contract will be added to that. It could be if it got done in time. So we will see if that happens. But what would the staff look like? Would Monty Lee stay on staff? What would Mainieri's staff look like? To talk about that and a lot more, we're going to bring in Jack Veltry. What's going on, Jack? Gamecock Central.
How we doing? How we doing, Chris?
Well, man, what's going on with you? Getting a little outside time?
Yeah, just getting outside. I was working on my golf game today and stuff, and then this happened, so scurried back home and got right to work, and it's been nonstop. But I appreciate you having me on to talk about this, and let's talk about some Gamecock baseball. I think this is a fascinating hire, in my opinion. If it happens.
Is fascinating, and that's what we were just talking about, man. I think there are a lot of reasons that this thing is so intriguing. I think when something comes out of, I've already used the baseball pun of coming out of left field, and I do have some thoughts, Jack, that I want to share, like thoughts/info on why it played out this way. We'll get into that, but let's just start with, why this has caused so much discussion. Number one, I mean, anytime a new head baseball coach at the University of South Carolina is hired, that's going to be the subject of a lot of a debate, right? But I think this one has gone to the next level because it came out of left field, because of who it is. Paul Mainieri, big time resume. Before you came on, I started laying it all out and decided I was boring people because he has a pretty extensive resume. He's won a title at Omaha. He's taken 2 different teams to Omaha. But the other part of it is the age, right? He is 66 years old, will be 67 later this year. So a lot of people are talking about that. And then the other aspect I think that I was about to get into before you came on is, what will the staff look like? Will it include Monty Lee? But what have you seen, Jack, in the early going, just the reaction from Gamecock Nation? We've got over 900 people on the streams right now.
That is so cool.
Which is crazy. What are your initial thoughts on this hire, and what have you seen from Gamecock country so far?
So I'll break this down a few different sections. I think with number one, I think this is a good hire. I think it's a great hire, actually. I think no one was really expecting this. I think this was completely out of left field. Chris, I know you've done a ton of reporting on the inside scoop on the search and stuff. And from what I read on your stuff, I don't remember seeing Paul's name on this. I feel like this completely just – I think Ray Tanner – is hot. He probably, I'm sure him and Paul go back a long way. I mean, they're the same age, and they have a lot of history together, obviously coaching against one another in the SEC. So I feel like this was one of those situations where, Paul's been out of the game since 2021, but at the same time, he really hasn't, because I was just talking to someone from LSU that covered the Tigers back in the day when they were winning the national championships and stuff and going to Omaha. And despite his age, the guy I was talking to was saying this is more of it's like a youthful hire because he's still got a lot of years left ahead of him that he wants to coach. His dad was a head coach and stuff and coached up into his late age. So I feel like with Mainieri here, it's not just a 3-year plan of, okay, he's going to coach you for 3 years and then he's going to turn over the keys to the car to a younger head coach. I feel like this is something that could be maybe a 5-year plan, maybe a little longer. I'm not sure. But personally, I like it. You needed to go out here and hire a winner, and that's exactly what South Carolina did. And like we said, it's completely out of left field, but it's a great hire. Now, the reception from the Gamecock fans and our subscribers and stuff, I'll run a quick poll later on the Insiders Forum, kind of asking everyone what their opinion is. I did something like this with Monty Lee last week about how people would feel about that. And so I'm interested to see what our subscribers have to say. From the small consensus I've gathered from reading comments and stuff, people are worried about the age, and rightfully so. The guy's 66 years old. He's the same age as Ray Tanner. So I think that's a little bit of a concern. He hasn't coached since 2021. But again, the important thing to note is that he was in the discussion for the Notre Dame job in 22, and then he was also in the discussion for the Miami job last year in 23. So it's not like he has been out of baseball. And again, the guy I talked to from LSU has been saying that he's been wanting to get back into the game for a little bit now, and he can still do it. I mean, the guy's a proven winner, and that really does not worry me at all. But overall, I think it's a good hire. I think the age is definitely the concern. But outside of that, I mean, what else can you really point at as being an issue? The guy gets the job done, and he's done it at Notre Dame, St. Thomas, LSU, and I'm forgetting one other school, Air Force.
Air Force, yep.
Yes. So, and Air Force is probably the one school where I feel like he didn't get it done consistently. I mean, he finished under 500 there overall record-wise. But at Notre Dame and LSU, big-time schools we're talking about in terms of baseball and stuff, that is where he got it done. And I think that should be a real – this is a home run. This is not just a home run hire. I think this is more of a grand slam type of hire for Ray, at least for right now.
Yeah, and I think, Jack, the thing is that folks have maybe more questions than they would with another hire. It's just different types of questions, right? Yeah. So let's just say South Carolina had hired, a Cliff Godwin or a Tom Walter, right? Or somebody like that. You might just have different types of questions. With this one, you don't go, can that guy win a national title? Well, he's done it, he's done it in the SEC. I think the questions are just, like you said, he's taken some time away from the game. So since he's left, you now have the transfer portal. You now have NIL. You are, we have seen successful coaches, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever. They've left one school, had great success at that school, gone to another school, and it hasn't worked out. That can happen with any coach, or that coach can change schools and go on to have great success or greater success at the next program. So that's a question I feel like with anybody. But I think the age and the fact that he's been out of the game and there have been some changes that have been fairly dramatic, I think that is causing people not to ask, well, can he win? It's just more of like, can he win now? Can he win here? And so one important component of that, Jack, I think is going to be the staff. So Monty Lee, let's just go ahead and let's have a long talk here about Monty. Monty was legitimately in the mix, according to my information, for the head coaching position. I think he was higher by the time this process kind of has been coming to a close, probably higher on that list than some people would realize or would think. But if you're looking for, hey, the goal is to put together a great staff with a proven winner head coach. Paul Mainieri is a proven winner head coach. Whether or not you think he'll do it here, he has in the past. But he will need to assemble a great staff, a staff that understands recruiting in the state of South Carolina, can navigate the transfer portal and NIL. And so to that end, what I'm hearing is South Carolina would love to keep Monty Lee on staff. Talk a little bit about, just since you started covering this program, what you think Monty Lee has brought and could continue to bring if they're able to keep him here in Columbia.
So over the past week, I've kind of gone through this whole cycle of, okay, maybe I think this guy's going to get hired. Maybe that guy's going to get hired. And then I've come to the conclusion that, like, I was kind of set on the idea of Monty Lee becoming the next head coach for South Carolina. Like, I kind of was like peace with it. I guess like an understanding of like, I think he can get it done. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, I think he's a great recruiter. He knows this state very well. And I mean, look, he's got a solid recruiting class coming in next year for 2025. And obviously, some of the big names like PJ Morlando and Carson Messina are probably not going to come to Carolina. They're probably going down the MLB draft route come July. But I think outside of that, like Monty knows how to recruit in this state. And I think that's such an underrated factor of baseball. You have to be able to recruit talent. And in the day and age of the transfer portal and NIL and high school guys, you have to be able to get talent. Another thing, he's also been at South Carolina on 2 different stints. So he worked with Ray from 02 to, I think it's either 02 or 03 until 2008. And then he obviously came back in 2023 to work under Mark Kingston. So he knows what it takes to win here. He's been to Omaha with Ray, and I think he's a Gamecock through and through, and the players love him. I think we've seen the amount of praise for him to become the next head coach after Mark got fired last Monday, and it was almost immediate. I mean, when you see guys like PJ Morlando and Dalton Reeves and Kennedy Jones, basically all the big name recruits, all the current players on the team wanting him to become the next head coach. And it's not even just that, it's also former players. The fact that all those guys wanted him, I think just speaks volumes to like, okay, if he's not going to become the next head coach, I think you at the very least have to find a way to get him on staff. And so when you bring a guy like Paul into the fold, I think, yeah, he's a great head coach and all, but how well does he know this state? How well can he recruit in South Carolina when you have another school like Clemson who is coming off a super regional appearance and has a guy like Eric Bakich that can definitely pull some guys in after, showing the amount of pride he has in coaching at Clemson and stuff. I think that's going to be tough. But I think if you have a guy like Monty that can go up against anyone in this state in terms of recruiting baseball talent, I think will definitely help. And again, your head coach is only as good as the staff and players around him. So I think if you get Monty back, I think that has to be priority number one. And then also, I mean, I'm sure the rumors have been out there about LSU's pitching coach that worked with Mainieri in the fold coming to Carolina. We'll see what happens with that, but I think that would also be solid. I think you need a good staff around him to make this work. And I think having Monty is an absolute must.
Yeah, Terry Rooney is who you're referencing, Jack. And I know a bunch of our listeners, viewers here have dropped his name in the comments as well. Current recruiting coordinator at LSU, and then was there from 2007 and 2008 with Paul Mainieri, left right before they ended up capturing the national championship. But he's a guy that's coached at about 10 different programs or so since 1997. He's been a head coach before. The talk is potentially pitching coach at South Carolina. To be clear, a couple things. Number one, let me go back to earlier for those who are maybe just tuning in. We still got people hopping on as we speak here. Mainieri is very likely to hire. I think it will get done from what I hear. Not done last we heard, but very, very much trending that direction as head coach. The questions are, what does the staff look like? Terry Rooney is someone that I've been told that Mainieri is very close with. Sounds like he wants to bring him. And so if that happens, that would be one assistant. And then Monty Lee is somebody that's certainly being targeted by South Carolina to keep him on staff. But that is also right now not confirmed. So just to throw that out there, just let everybody know we're not sitting here talking about that wouldn't be a full staff, but those things are not totally done. Could they all end up happening? Could. And so obviously fun to talk about those things and what they may look like. We've got, Jack, now over 1,400 people on the live show. So a lot of people
awesome.
wanting to talk about Paul Mainieri and Gamecock baseball. And real quick, let me take this opportunity. I want to tell y'all, since we got so many people on here, Jack, you referenced some stories we've been writing on Gamecock Central and the Insiders Forum where all the Gamecock fans hang out and talk about all this and read all our content. YouTube only special. You're not going to read about this in the paper. We're not going to put it on. Well, I guess we are putting it on Twitter, kind of, because we're streaming on Twitter. But we're not putting it out there. We're not going to email it to you. It's literally streaming only. Special offer. If you want access to all our content, we're going to be working on a lot more, working on kind of, Jack, a behind the scenes piece on how this came together. $1 for 2 months of access to all of our content on Gamecock Central plus the Insiders Forum. The code is SCAR1. Last time a bunch of Gamecock fans actually took us up on that offer, joined us over at Gamecock Central. So if you like the show, want to support us, want to get even more in depth, go to GamecockCentral.com, click join, $1 for 2 months. You can get it. It can be yours. Code SCAR1. We would love to have you. Jack, let's go back to the search a little bit. We got more to talk about with Paul Mainieri, but for the search, so Mark Kingston was fired on a Monday, you mentioned, right after. 1 week ago today. Seems like a lot longer, to be honest with you.
It feels like it.
But he was fired on a Monday, and very quickly the wheels started turning on the search. And I think pretty quickly things got narrowed down, like the field narrowed. My understanding, even though, and I'm going to expand on this a lot more in the coming days as I can on Gamecock Central and maybe here, I don't think Mainieri came up at the 11th hour. In other words, the thing that the notion that I want to kind of dispel is that they went through this process. They talked to guys like Cliff Godwin, Tom Walter from Wake Forest, Scott Pollard from Duke, Monty, et cetera, and then said, well, either A, we don't like any of those guys, or B, none of those guys are going to come. Let's throw a Hail Mary at Paul Mainieri. It wasn't really like that. From my understanding, there were some talks earlier. Now, how and why exactly it kind of, I don't know if circled back kind of sounds like it's a backup plan, so I don't want to say it that way. How it kind of came back to Mainieri, I don't know quite yet. I'm still working on that, but it did. But the point is that even though it came out of left field, this one was a little quiet. It did kind of come out of left field from that regard, but it wasn't like a last second Hail Mary type of thing. This was a candidate that was out there. It was like you said, Jack, I didn't catch wind of it. I don't think any of us really caught wind of it here until the last few hours, which is very fascinating to me.
And I think this is something that, like we kind of referenced before, Paul Mainieri's been coaching college baseball for almost 40 years at this point. And I think, him and Ray go back a long way. I have to assume, I'm sure they've been friends for a while since they've coached against each other in the SEC for so long. I feel like Ray's probably always had this in his back pocket. And again, it feels like he's been keeping this whole situation kind of close to the chest, close to the vest, and not letting a ton of things leak out. And obviously, Paul Mainieri was not on the rumor list for pretty much majority of this time. So I definitely agree with you, Chris, that this wasn't like a last second thing. Like, hey, Paul, this is Ray Tanner from South Carolina. Can you come coach the Gamecocks next season? I need a yes or no answer right now. Like, I don't think it was like that at all. I am sure he's always like the fact that Mainieri was in the discussion for the Notre Dame job, like I said, and the Miami job, each of the last 2 years shows me that, hey, this guy still has an interest in baseball. So maybe the third time's the charm with coming back to coach at an SEC school that's hungry to get back to Omaha. And this feels like the perfect opportunity for him to come in and do that right away. Now, can it happen in year one? It's possible, but there's so many other factors that we have to figure out here. Like who's going to be on the coaching staff? How many players are you going to be able to retain from this South Carolina team, and what are you going to be able to do in the transfer portal? I think that's a lot of different things that you have to figure out. And I think with bringing a good staff around, this is why you need a Monty Lee. This is why you need a Terry Rooney to come in that knows how to work with pitchers. I mean, he's worked with a lot of different guys, brought in the number one recruiting class when LSU won the title in 2009. So I think putting those two guys together can be like I'm trying to think of a comparison here, but it can be really big. And then just in general, I think this is the right hire. And again, I've kept saying that, but it feels that way. South Carolina wanted a winner, and they're getting it.
I think that in some ways, and Rick Miller needs a drink. Maybe Jack Veltry also does.
I do too. I do too.
Um, yeah, Big Red, a phonetic pronunciation for the new coach. Paul Mainieri
Yeah,
is
I was looking it up on
okay. I got
YouTube to figure out like old clips of like how guys pronounce it, and Jay Johnson says Mainieri. So that
there you go.
is that is
He
how
should know.
that is how they say it. So we'll see what
Yes,
happens.
exactly. Jim Sanders, this is a point we've talked about. Can he handle the portal and NIL? Look, and here's that brings up kind of the next point. Actually, I was going to segue into. To me, Jack, this hire, assuming that it certainly happens, which it again very much trending that way, looks like it will eventually be finalized. If Mainieri's the head coach, and if especially they can keep Monty Lee on staff. Monty Lee, by the way, a guy that, according to sources I've spoken with, the Citadel has really wanted for their head coaching position. He could remember before he got the Clemson job, he was at College of Charleston. He could very much go say, "Hey, I'm going to, step back from Power 4 level and go be a head coach again, and either stay there and have success, probably, or be a stepping stone to another bigger job at some point." But Monty Lee, like you said, he's a guy that's been in the state of South Carolina, all of his career, basically.
Yeah, basically, because Charleston, South Carolina, then
Yeah.
or I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact method of how,
You
but he's
got
been at
Clemson, you got South Carolina, you got
yeah,
Charleston, you had Citadel's
yeah.
interested in him with his recruiting ties in the state. Makes a lot of sense.
He's a
So
Carolina guy.
far, he is not engaged on that job. Now, I think a lot of that was, again, legitimately in the mix for the South Carolina job. You don't jump at the Citadel, no offense to them, but you don't
Yeah.
jump at the Citadel job if you've got a shot at the South Carolina job. Now the question is, can you get Monty? But if you can get Monty to stay and you've got Paul Mainieri as the head coach, to me, Jack, it's kind of like threading the needle with the boxes that you kind of want to check, right? I believe that there are some folks around USC, probably including Ray Tanner, who believe that, hey, Monty could be successful as the head coach at South Carolina. But there's also very much the recognition that you've got to get this hire right. And could you go out there and hire a head coach who's, been to Omaha multiple times as a head coach, who has won a national title as a head coach, and kind of trying to pair those things together? That to me seems like what the play is here with this hire and this potential staff that they're looking to put together.
And with this potential staff we're talking about here, I mean, it's not obviously official or anything. None of this is officially confirmed or anything. We'll get more indication when the board of trustees meets tomorrow at 4:00 and they discuss. But from the looks of it, from the sound of it, having Terry Rooney, Paul Mainieri, Monty Lee, they're gonna have to probably have one more coach, right? Because they would have to have 4 on staff, 3 paid assistants, and then the one head coach. To me, this is just crazy. This is just off the rip speaking here. This feels like an Avengers level threat right here. Like this is a real, like, bring the top superheroes from around the world together to go to Omaha. Like that's what this feels like. You're going in full force here, not holding back, bringing a guy out of retirement to come coach who's been to the top multiple times. Like he's been to multiple College World Series and he's won once. So that right there is awesome. And then Terry Rooney, like I said, had the number 1 recruiting class back in 09 or in 09. And then, I mean, he's had 20 pitchers that were selected in the first 10 rounds of the MLB draft. And obviously he got to work a little bit with Paul Skeens when he was at LSU last year. So I think it's all working well. And the fact that you can put 2 recruiting minds like Rooney and Lee together, I think that's going to work wonders, assuming it happens. And then whoever you bring on as the 4th coach on staff, I mean, try to find another gem out there. But I think it's also good that it seems like South Carolina is going to be cleaning house for the most part in terms of the coaching staff. Obviously, Monty's the exception to that, but I think you really needed to just wipe the slate clean and then go from there. Like I wasn't super impressed with what this coaching staff did under Mark Kingston last year. But I do think there is potential for something really special to happen here if the chips fall into place.
Important update. Rick Miller does have his drink. So that's good to know. Thank you, Rick. We appreciate you. Here's something Big Red said. This, we brought up portal and NIL. It is hard for me to envision a Paul Mainieri, and he could get here and prove me wrong. We might get calls. Paul Mainieri's been out fundraising left and right, for NIL. Hey, maybe, right? I imagine he's probably going to be a little bit more focused on the on-field aspect, right? I think that this is where having somebody like Mainieri who understands that the landscape, especially in the state of South Carolina, can really help you navigate some of those things, right? And depending on the type of staff you put together, it is important nowadays for, I think, Jack, head coaches to understand and embrace NIL and the transfer portal. It's kind of a necessary part of the game. I don't want to go as far as saying you must participate in the transfer portal to win, but it kind of looks that way in baseball. If you go look at the teams that are playing, that are heading to Omaha, that are already ticketed, that have a chance to get there, they're going to have transfers. And for South Carolina, you start thinking about rebuilding this roster, right? Because you got to make this hire and you got to get this hire right, Jack. But we also know that there's some work to do on the roster as well, whether it's retaining players or bringing in new players. And I think, from some of the things that have been reported that we've seen, high schoolers, junior college transfers, South Carolina's always relied on both of those heavily, and now transfer portal. And they've had some success in the portal as well. You look back to this past season, we can talk about coaching and all those things. We should. You just talked about that a little bit, Jack. But they're going to have to upgrade this roster as well, whether we're sitting here talking about head coach Paul Mainieri, Mainieri, Cliff Godwin, like whoever you name. One of the orders of business is let's go look at this roster and figure out what needs to be done next. So NIL, portal, those things are important. Junior college recruiting, Carolina's got some guys committed from the junior college ranks. They've been hosting, even during the coaching search, they've been hosting transfer portal prospects. So the roster flip, I think, is going to be pretty important here as well.
I definitely think so, and you're definitely right. I think transfer portal, NIL, that's the way college sports are going, whether you like it or not. And in baseball specifically, I think you have to be able to go out there and get talent from the portal to make it work. Think about it this way: with this past year's team, you had Dalton Reeves, Kennedy Jones, guys like that in your lineup that were making an immediate impact. And none of that would have been possible without the help of NIL and the transfer portal. And you have to be able to recruit, but you also have to be able to persuade guys from other schools to come in and make an impact. And in terms of the roster for next year, I think it's going to be a good mix of guys from last year's team and guys from the portal and the JUCO ranks and stuff. I've already seen that I think South Carolina has 3 of the top 10 JUCO guys, JUCO players coming in next season, which is awesome. I mean, JUCO guys can be like a diamond in the rough type of find, and I think it can work out really well. But I mean, at the same time, this is a roster from last season that went 1-2 in regional play and was not good enough to get the job done. I mean, the story of the season was the fact that they couldn't hit with runners in scoring position. And what did they do in their final game of the year? They didn't hit with runners in scoring position. They went 0 for 20 in the Raleigh Regional with our ISP. So that right there tells me that they have an offensive problem, so they need to go out there and find guys that are going to be probably better suited to help the offense right away. That's not saying that there aren't guys in this lineup that can't hit. I mean, they had Ethan Petrie and Cole Messina, 2 All-Americans, and then obviously guys like I just named, Reeves, Jones. You had a lot of good players. Blake Jackson is also from the transfer portal. You had a lot of good guys in this lineup that can do some damage. Now it's just about, okay, how can we add to that? How can we make it better for 2025 and beyond? And I think you have to go into the portal and find some guys. I think it's going to help if you bring in a guy like Rooney that we just talked about. What are his ties like to Baton Rouge? I mean, that's a really good baseball-rich state right there. What are his ties to maybe like a state like Texas or one of those other states there on the in the Midwest, I guess you could say. How can he help with that? And also, what can Mainieri do in terms of bringing more talent in from the Southeast? I think when you put that all together, it really bodes well for a solid team next year. And then obviously the pitching staff, I think you have a lot of young guys that I would suggest going out there and trying to retain from this year's team. Some names that come to mind: Tyler Pitzer, Parker Marlott, Jake McCoy. There's a lot of, I think there's a few other freshmen that I'm forgetting right off the top of my head here, but I think the freshman class that they have this season, pitching wise, can turn into something really special. And then bring in some more veteran guys from the portal or, JUCO level to come in and puzzle it together. Because I think that's kind of what was missing with this year's team. In my opinion, they had an Omaha level pitching staff in 2023. It's just that guys got hurt, and when it came down to it, they just couldn't get the job done in Gainesville in that super regional. This year, they didn't really have that. They had a lot of question marks in the rotation and the bullpen in general. This year, or this upcoming season, I feel like if they go out there and get some guys, they can kind of change that. And that's the benefit of the portal. And I think that's where you really need guys like Rooney and Monty to go out there and get the job done, because I believe they can.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, in some way, I was thinking about this earlier, Jack. We've seen a lot of teams go from not that great to really pretty freaking good in in a short amount of time. I mean, look at what Georgia's done this year,
Exactly.
for example. I mean, they're a pretty darn good team. And South Carolina is not a program that there've been some years where they've slipped and missed the tournament. That's been very rare, but typically South Carolina's been a team that's never that far off, right? Like even under Mark Kingston, under Chad Holbrook, the last two coaches at South Carolina have been dismissed. Both of those coaches did make super regionals in their time at South Carolina. Not every year, obviously, or one of them would still be here. But they did make super regionals, and they many times made regionals. And so when you do that, when you're getting into the tournament, you're typically not that far off, particularly when you're playing in the SEC. So it's about taking that next step, getting a little bit better. You mentioned, I agree with you, biggest difference, the runners in scoring position thing, yes. The inconsistencies hitting at times, yes. But to me, if you point at one thing this season, it's the pitching. It's losing, Noah Hall, who was the big injury last year, and Hicks and Will Sanders. Like, you went from alphas to guys that you got some great performances at times this year, but there was not as much consistency. And there was always a question of what is the rotation? I mean, remember how many times the rotation changed? I think it was just trying to find solutions. And so, look, a lot of those guys you mentioned will develop and be better players. Guys don't get on campus and stay the exact same. Wes says that a lot in football. He's right. Guys Pitzer, guys like that, they will continue to develop, I think, and get better. But there are also some things with this roster, some deficiencies, some holes, whatever you want to call them, where South Carolina will have to get better. And so obviously that's going to go to recruiting. And that's why we're all talking about Mainieri and what an asset he could be, because I think he has been a pretty big asset here. Jack, over 1,900 people on the show, and we're going to give people, those 1,900 people, a little lesson on My Perfect Franchise. Our friend Andy Luedecke can help you find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. Andy is a franchise consultant, and what he can do is help match you with your dream business. If you want to learn more about whether franchise ownership is right for you, you can go to his website, myperfectfranchise.net, opt in to his email list. You just take a short quiz, and he's going to talk with you and help see if franchise ownership, owning your own business, may be right for you. His website's really good, myperfectfranchise.net. He'll kind of walk you through the process. You start everything out with a phone call, find the perfect franchise for your lifestyle. He matches you with that franchise, and there's no obligation. You can just check it out, give him a call. It's a free service for you to see if he can match you with your perfect franchise. Again, that's our friend Andy Luedecke at myperfectfranchise.net. All right, Jack, I'm gonna let you run, man. You're outside. You got interrupted on the game of golf. I'm not kicking you off the show to be clear. I might stay on a few more minutes and blab about some football recruiting stuff. Do you have any closing thoughts on baseball that you want to add before we part ways?
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate you inviting me to come on and talk to everyone here. Thank you guys for all tuning in. Chris has done a wonderful job over the last week, and so has Wes Mitchell, and I think everyone's been doing a real good team effort type of work. I'll say one more thing about this hire. Look, I think while there are concerns about the fact that Paul Mainieri is older and stuff, at the same time, am I wrong that everyone kind of wanted a winner, right? Why? I mean, if you're picking between having a winning head coach and someone that is inexperienced, like a Chad Holbrook was when it came to hiring him, I mean, he didn't have any head coaching experience, to my knowledge, back in 2012. He was just an assistant. So you can go one of two ways with it, and I feel like with getting a winner here it's the right move. It's someone that is going to come in and do immediate work, and if you put the right staff around him, it can work out super well here. And I think if everything lines up like we're talking about here, this next year can be a really big stepping stone year. Maybe not getting to Omaha and winning the College World Series in year one. I feel like that's a little tough to expect from a guy. But this is someone that can handle the expectations, someone that works really well, from what I've heard, with the media and the fans and the players and stuff. I feel like this is the guy that can get them there. It's just all about putting the pieces into place. And look, I mean, Ray Tanner's taken a lot of heat for the last two hires. And, I think everyone's kind of said that he needs to get this one right. And credit to him. If this does end up being the case where Paul Mainieri is the next head coach at the University of South Carolina for this baseball program, it is a grand slam hire, like I said before. And he deserves a lot of credit for, not holding back and going out and getting the guy that he wants, and this is the guy that he wants. So that's all I really got on it, man. We're over 2,000 viewers on this stream now. That's awesome to see. But like I said, I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to talking about this whole ordeal throughout the week.
Jack, I appreciate your time, man. Go, good. I don't know. You're not on the golf course anymore. Go chip some balls in the backyard or something.
I'm gonna go eat now, but I appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you again.
All right, that's Jack Veltry. Thanks so much, Jack. He removed himself. I put him back on. I'm going to let him go now. Man, over 2,000 Gamecock fans, maybe some LSU fans, maybe some Air Force fans, Clemson fans, who knows, on the stream as well. Really appreciate y'all jumping in. Keep dropping your comments. Let us know your thoughts. Come on over to GamecockCentral.com. We're working on writing a bunch of content as well. Again, going to work on a little bit of a behind-the-scenes piece to kind of lay out as we continue learning more about how this thing came together. Again, assuming it gets done as we sit here at 7:15 Eastern time, not a done deal, but certainly trending in the direction of Paul Mainieri being the next head coach at South Carolina. And then we'll see what the staff looks like. Mainieri, a possibility. That's something that everybody at South Carolina would like to see. And when I say everybody, not just mainly fans, right? Basically, the people who make decisions, I think, would like to see that hire. My understanding, Paul Mainieri would like to see that happen and would have Mainieri as part of his staff. Terry Rooney, who's a guy who's currently at LSU as the recruiting coordinator and has a history and knows Paul Mainieri well, was previously with him at LSU, is another name that has been bandied about. And I have also heard as a very strong possibility to join a Paul Mainieri staff. Guys, I don't even know if y'all want to talk about football recruiting, but let me hit on it real quick. 5 out, well, now 4. There were 4 welcome homes over the weekend. That took the grand total of outstanding unrevealed welcome homes to 5. There's now been another public football commitment that has taken that number back down to 4. So still 4 unrevealed welcome homes. Gamecocks did get a commitment from a 3-star edge out of Roswell, Georgia, Kabi Saki Pra. I do not know, to be quite honest, if I'm saying that name correctly, but he was on a campus on an official visit over the weekend. 6'3", 210. If you've seen the pics of him, big wingspan on this guy. Very interesting prospect. South Carolina had its second big official visit weekend over the weekend, netted some more welcome homes. Some more of those could be revealed. I think some of them may take a little while. Some of them could be sooner. One of them certainly happened today. There could be some more that happen in the next day, the next week, something like that. So stay tuned here on youtube.com/Gamecock Central. For those of you that follow us on YouTube. Hey, by the way, make sure, a lot of you dropping comments. If you're on YouTube, best way to watch us, in my opinion, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Drop us a like, drop us a comment. Click on the little bell to turn on the notifications. That will notify you anytime we have a new video or anytime we go live, like we have tonight with breaking news. And yes, still 4 outstanding welcome homes. So still several to be revealed that, again, I think at least some could happen in the next days, the next week, something like that. I think others could potentially take longer to be revealed. So we'll have all that news for you as we get it on GamecockCentral.com. Reminder, Board of Trustees meeting scheduled at South Carolina for Tuesday, June the 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern. I think that's a teleconference. We'll have more on that for you at Gamecock Central. We do not know as of right now, 7:17 Eastern p.m., Monday night. We don't know yet if a contract for a baseball coach will be added to that docket. It could be. Last we checked, I don't think so. It could be added if they can go ahead and reach an agreement with Paul Mainieri to be the next head baseball coach. If it doesn't happen tomorrow afternoon, not a huge deal. It could just end up happening at a later date, but could potentially get it done then. New men's golf head coach, I would expect to be named tomorrow. New women's softball coach could also be announced tomorrow and finalized. South Carolina's been working on basically 3 coaching searches at once. So probably get 2 of the 3 done, could get 3 of the 3 done. But again, just to recap, to bring it back all first full circle, Paul Mainieri expected to be the next head coach of Gamecock baseball, provided that he and the University of South Carolina can strike an agreement. Will be a fascinating situation to continue tracking. Will it definitely get done? I think it will. What will the staff look like? What does the recruiting class look like in terms of impact on retention of the current roster, right? South Carolina's got some big-time guys that could come back. You've always got the transfer portal, exit or enter, lurking out there. Plenty of fascinating storylines to cover. We'll have it all here on future editions of GC Live. Again, youtube.com/Gamecock Central. Make sure you like, subscribe. Click on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a video. And one more time, I want to give this to y'all one more time because there's 2,000 people on here. I want to make sure you see it. $1 for your first 2 months on GamecockCentral.com. What does that get you? Access to all of our content. If you've ever clicked on one of our stories and say, man, I ran into a paywall, that helps us do what we do. It does cost money to do the job that we do. We have a full staff, boots on the ground reporting. This does support us, and it supports our work. It lets us do the job. So if you do enjoy even our free content, it is a way to support us, and it gets you access to everything. You get the Insiders Forum, which is basically like really cool social media for Gamecock fans. It's only Gamecock fans, no Clemson, no anybody else. There on the forums, you can ask me questions. You can ask Wes, Jack, who we just had. You can ask him questions. Recruiting scoop, football scoop, coaching searches, all that stuff. You get access to all of our interviews, content, everything. SCAR1, SCAR1 is the code, $1 for your first 2 months. I really, really hate, thank you, Gamecock Ryan. I really hate to get off here with 2,100 people on the stream, but we do got to go. We got to make some more phone calls, do some more work. I think the guys are going to be back tomorrow with another live show on Tuesday. Wes and I hopefully back on Wednesday. We got a lot more to talk about. And, hey, this was fun. Maybe we'll do more impromptu lives. They seem to go well when there's some breaking news. So really appreciate everybody joining us. Go check out GamecockCentral.com. SCAR1, SCAR1 is the promo code if you're not already a member. Until next time, Chris Clark from Gamecock Central. Hope everybody has a wonderful night. Thanks a lot for joining.